Okay, we're up to episode 8 of the Mueller Report audiobook. Thanks for sticking with us. It's a long book to get through. And we're up to, we're still in volume 1. We're discussing Paul Manafort's connections with Ukraine and Russia. And we're reading from page 135. Immediately upon joining the campaign, Manafort directed Gates to prepare for his review separate memoranda addressed to Deripaska, Armatov, Serhiy Lyovochkin and Boris Kolesnikov, the last three being Ukrainian oligarchs who were senior opposition bloc officials. The memoranda described Manafort's appointment to the Trump campaign and indicated his willingness to consult on Ukrainian politics in the future. On March 30, 2016, Gates emailed the memoranda in a press release announcing Manafort's appointment to Kilminik for translation and dissemination. Manafort later followed up with Kilminik to ensure his messages had been delivered, emailing on April 11, 2016 to ask whether Kilminik had shown our friends the media coverage of his new role. Kilminik replied, "Absolutely, every article." Manafort further asked, "How do we use to get whole? Has OVD, Oleg Velimir Deripaska, operation seen?" Kilminik wrote back the next day, "Yes, I've been sending everything to Victor, who has been forwarding coverage directly to OVD." Gates reported that Manafort said that being hired on the campaign would be good for business and increase the likelihood of Manafort would be paid the approximately $2 million he was owed for previous political consulting work in Ukraine. Gates also explained to the office that Manafort thought his role on the campaign would help confirm that Deripaska had dropped the Pericles suit and that Gates believed Manafort sent polling data to Deripaska, as discussed further below, so that Deripaska could not move forward with his lawsuit against Manafort. Gates further stated that Deripaska wanted a visa in the United States, that Deripaska could believe that having Manafort in a position inside the campaign or administration might be helpful to Deripaska, and that Manafort's relationship with Trump could help Deripaska in other ways as well. Gates stated, however, that Manafort never told him anything specific about what, if anything, Manafort might be offering Deripaska. Cates also reported that Manafort instructed him on April 2016 or early May 2016 to send Kilminik campaign internal polling data and other updates so that Kilminik in turn could share it with Russian oligarchs. Gates understood that the information would also be shared with Deripaska. A redaction there. Gates reported to the office that he did not know why Manafort wanted him to send polling information, but Gates thought it was a way to showcase Manafort's work, and Manafort wanted to open doors to jobs after the Trump campaign ended. Gates said that Manafort's instruction included sending internal polling data prepared for the Trump campaign by pollster Tony Fabrizio. Fabrizio had worked with Manafort for years and was brought into the campaign by Manafort. Gates stated that in accordance with Manafort's instruction, he periodically sent Kilminik polling data via WhatsApp. Gates then deleted the communications on a daily basis. Gates further told the office that after Manafort left the campaign in mid-August, Gates sent Kilminik polling data less frequently and that the data he sent was more publicly available information and less internal data. Gates' account about polling data is consistent redaction, with multiple emails that Kilminik sent to US associates and press contacts between late July and mid-August 2016. Those emails referenced internal polling, described the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's role in it, and assessed Trump's prospects for victory. Manafort did not acknowledge instructing Gates to send Kilminik internal data, and have a redaction of a sentence there. The office also obtained contemporaneous emails that shed light on the purpose of the communications with Deripaska and that are consistent with Gates' account. For example, in response to a July 2016 email from a Ukrainian reporter about Manafort's failed Deripaska-backed investment, Manafort asked Kilminik whether there had been any movement on this issue with our friend. Gates stated that our friend likely referred to Deripaska, and Manafort told the office that the issue, and our biggest interest as stated below, was a solution to the Deripaska Pericles issue. Kilminik replied, "I am carefully optimistic on the question of our biggest interest. Our friend Boyakin said there is lately significantly more attention to the campaign in his boss, Deripaska's mind, and he will be most likely looking for ways to reach out to you pretty soon, understanding all the time sensitivity. I am more than sure that it will be resolved and we will get back to the original relationship with V's boss, Deripaska." 8 minutes later, Manafort replied that Kilminik should tell Boyakin's boss, a reference to Deripaska, that if he needs private briefings, we can accommodate. Manafort has alleged to the office that he was willing to brief Deripaska only on public campaign matters and gave an example, why Trump selected Mike Pence as the vice presidential running mate. Manafort said he never gave Deripaska a briefing. Manafort noted that if Trump won, Deripaska would want to use Manafort to advance whatever interests Deripaska had in the United States and elsewhere. Paul Manafort's 2 campaign period meetings with Konstantin Kilminik in the United States. Manafort twice met with Kilminik in person during the campaign period, once in May and again in August 2016. The first meeting took place on May 7, 2016 in New York City. In the days leading to the meeting, Kilminik had been working to gather information about the political situation in Ukraine. That included information gleaned from a trip that former Party of Regions official Yuri Boyko had recently taken to Moscow, a trip that likely included meetings between Boyko and high-ranking Russian officials. Kilminik then travelled to Washington, D.C. on or about May 5, 2016. While in Washington, Kilminik had pre-arranged meetings with State Department employees. Late on the evening of May 6, Gates arranged for Kilminik to take a 3 a.m. train to meet Manafort in New York for breakfast on May 7. According to Manafort, during the meeting, he and Kilminik talked about events in Ukraine. Manafort briefed Kilminik on the Trump campaign, expecting Kilminik to pass the information back to individuals in Ukraine and elsewhere. Manafort stated that opposition bloc members recognised Manafort's position on the campaign was an opportunity, but Kilminik did not ask for anything. Kilminik spoke about a plan for Boyko to boost election participation in the eastern zone of Ukraine, which was the base for the opposition bloc. Kilminik returned to Washington, D.C. right after the meeting with Manafort. Manafort met with Kilminik a second time at the Grand Havana Club in New York City on the evening of August 2, 2016. The events leading to the meeting are as follows. On July 28, 2016, Kilminik flew from Kiev to Moscow. The next day, Kilminik wrote to Manafort requesting that they meet, using coded language about a conversation he had that day. In an email with the subject line Black Caviar, Kilminik wrote, "I met today with a guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar several years ago. We spent about 5 years talking about his story, and I have several important messages from him to you. He asked me to go and brief you on our conversation. I said I have to run it by you first, but in principle I'm prepared to do it. It has to do about the future of his country and is quite interesting." Manafort identified the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar was Yanukovych. He explained that in 2010 he and Yanukovych had lunch to celebrate the recent presidential election. Yanukovych gave Manafort a large jar of black caviar that was worth approximately $30,000 to $40,000. Manafort's identification of Yanukovych as the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar is consistent with Kilminik being in Moscow, where Yanukovych resided. When Kilminik wrote, "I met today with the guy," and with a December 2016 email in which Kilminik referred to Yanukovych as BG, redaction, Manafort replied to Kilminik's July 29 email, "Tuesday, August 2 is best, Tuesday or Wednesday in New York City." 3 days later, on July 31, 2016, Kilminik flew back to Kiev from Moscow. And on that same day, he wrote to Manafort that he needed about 2 hours for their meeting because it is long caviar story to tell. Kilminik wrote that he would arrive in JFK on August 2 at 7:30 p.m. and he and Manafort agreed to late dinner that night. Documentary evidence, including flight, phone and hotel records and the timing of the text messages exchanged, confirms the dinner took place as planned on August 2. As to the contents of the meeting itself, the accounts of Manafort and Gates, who arrived late to the dinner, differ in certain respects, but their version of events, when assessed alongside available documentary evidence of what Kilminik told business associate Sam Patton, indicate that at least 3 principal topics were discussed. First, Manafort and Kilminik discussed a plan to resolve the ongoing political problems in Ukraine by creating an autonomous republic in its more industrialized eastern region of Donbass, and having Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president ousted in 2014, elected to head that republic. The plan, Manafort later acknowledged, constituted a backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine. Manafort initially said that if he had not cut off the discussion, Kilminik would have asked Manafort in the August 2 meeting to convince Trump to come out in favour of the peace plan, and Yanukovych would have expected Manafort to use his connections in Europe and Ukraine to support the plan. Manafort also initially told the office that he had said to Kilminik that the plan was crazy and that the discussion ended, and that he did not recall Kilminik asking Manafort to reconsider the plan after their August 2 meeting. Manafort said, redaction for the grand jury, that he reacted negatively to Yanukovych sending years later an urgent request when Yanukovych needed him. When confronted with an email written by Kilminik on or about December 8, 2016, however, Manafort acknowledged Kilminik raised the peace plan again in that email. Manafort ultimately acknowledged Kilminik also raised the peace plan in January and February 2017 meetings with Manafort, redaction. Second, Manafort briefed Kilminik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, it also included discussion of battleground states, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Manafort did not refer explicitly to battleground states in his telling of the August 2 discussion. Third, according to Gates and what Kilminik told Patton, Manafort and Kilminik discussed two sets of financial disputes related to Manafort's previous work in the region. Those consisted of the unresolved Deripaska lawsuit and the funds that the opposition bloc owed to Manafort for his political consulting work, and how Manafort might be able to obtain payment. After the meeting, Gates and Manafort both stated that they left separately from Kilminik because they knew the media was tracking Manafort and wanted to avoid media reporting on his connections to Kilminik. Post-resignation activities. Manafort resigned from the Trump campaign mid-August 2016, approximately 2 weeks after his second meeting with Kilminik, amidst negative media reporting about his political consulting work for the pro-Russian Party of Regions in Ukraine. Despite his resignation, Manafort continued to offer advice to various campaign officials through the November election. Manafort told Gates that he still spoke with Kushner, Bannon and candidate Trump, and some of those post-resignation contacts are documented in emails. For example, in October 21, 2016, Manafort sent Kushner an email and attached a strategy memorandum proposing that the campaign make the case against Clinton as the failed and corrupt champion of the establishment, and that WikiLeaks provides the Trump campaign the ability to make the case in a very credible way by using the words of Clinton, its campaign officials and DNC members. Later, in a November 5, 2016 email to Kushner entitled Securing the Victory, Manafort stated that he was really feeling good about our prospects on Tuesday and focusing on preserving the victory, and that he was concerned the Clinton campaign would respond to a loss by moving immediately to discredit Trump's victory and claim voter fraud and cyber fraud, including the claim that the Russians have hacked into the voting machines and tampered with results. Trump was elected president on November 8, 2016. Manafort told the office that, in the wake of Trump's victory, he was not interested in an administration job. Manafort instead preferred to stay on the outside and monetize his campaign position to generate business, given his familiarity and relationship with Trump and the incoming administration. Manafort appeared to follow that plan as he travelled to the Middle East, Cuba, South Korea, Japan and China, and was paid to explain what a Trump presidency would entail. Manafort's activities in early 2017 include meetings related to Ukraine and Russia. The first meeting, which took place in Madrid, Spain, in January 2017, was with Georgy Oganov, who has previously worked in the Russian embassy in the United States, was a senior executive at a Deripaska company, and was believed to report directly to Deripaska. Manafort initially denied attending the meeting. When he later acknowledged it, he claimed that the meeting had been arranged by his lawyers and concerned only the Pericles lawsuit. Other evidence, however, provides reason to doubt Manafort's statement that the sole topic of the meeting was the Pericles lawsuit. In particular, text messages to Manafort from a number associated with Kilminik suggest that Kilminik and Boyakin, not Manafort's counsel, had arranged the meeting between Manafort and Oganov. Kilminik's message states that the meeting was supposed to be not about money or Pericles, but instead about recreating the old friendship, ostensibly between Manafort and Deripaska, and talking about global politics. Manafort also replied to texts that he needs this finished before January 20, which appears to be a reference to resolving Pericles before the inauguration. On January 15, 2017, 3 days after his return from Madrid, Manafort emailed KT McFarlane, who was at that time designated to be Deputy National Security Advisor and was formally appointed to that position on January 20, 2017. Manafort's January 15 email to McFarlane stated, "I have some important information I want to share that I picked up on my travels over the last month." Manafort told the office that the email referred to an issue regarding Cuba, not Russia or Ukraine, and Manafort had travelled to Cuba in the past month. Either way, McFarlane, who was advised by Flynn not to respond to the Manafort inquiry, appears not to have responded to Manafort. Manafort told the office that around the time of the presidential inauguration in January, he met with Kilminik and Ukrainian oligarch Serhiy Livoshkin at the Western Hotel in Alexandria, Virginia. During this meeting, Kilminik again discussed the Yanukovych peace plan that he had broached at the August 2 meeting and in a detailed December 8, 2016 message found in Kilminik's DMP email account. In that December 8 email, which Manafort acknowledged having read, Kilminik wrote, "All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slight push from DT," an apparent reference to the President-elect Trump, "and a decision to authorise you to be a special representative to manage this process." Kilminik assured Manafort with that authority he could start the process and within 10 days visit Russia. Yanukovych guarantees your reception at the very top level, and that DT could have peace in the Ukraine basically within a few months after inauguration. As noted above, redaction and statements to the office, Manafort sought to qualify his engagement on and support for the plan. Another redaction there. On February 26, 2017, Manafort met Kilminik in Madrid, where Kilminik had flown from Moscow. In his first two interviews with the office, Manafort denied meeting with Kilminik on his Madrid trip. Then, after being confronted with documentary evidence that Kilminik was in Madrid at the same time as him, recognised that he met him in Madrid. Manafort said that Kilminik had updated him on a criminal investigation into so-called black ledger payments to Manafort that was being conducted by Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau. Redaction. Manafort remained in contact with Kilminik throughout 2017 and into the spring of 2018. Those contacts included matters pertaining to the criminal charges brought by the office and the Ukraine peace plan. In early 2018, Manafort retained his long-time polling firm to craft a draft poll in Ukraine, sent the pollsters a 3-page primer on the plan, sent to Kilminik, and worked with Kilminik to formulate the polling questions. The primer sent to the pollsters specifically called for the United States and President Trump to support the autonomous Republic of Donbass with Yanukovych as Prime Minister. And a series of questions in the draft poll asked for opinions on Yanukovych's role in resolving the conflict in Donbass. The poll was not solely about Donbass. It also sought participants' views on leaders apart from Yanukovych as they pertain to the 2019 Ukraine presidential election. The office has not uncovered evidence that Manafort brought the Ukraine peace plan to the attention of the Trump campaign or the Trump administration. Kilminik continued his efforts to promote the peace plan to the executive branch, e.g. the US Department of State, into the summer of 2018. Post-election and transition period contacts. Trump was elected president on November 8, 2016. Beginning immediately after the election, individuals connected to the Russian government started contacting officials in the Trump campaign and transition team through multiple channels, sometimes through Russian ambassador Kislyak, and at other times through individuals who sought reliable contacts through US persons not formally tied to the campaign or transition team. The most senior levels of the Russian government encouraged these efforts. The investigation did not establish that these efforts reflected or constituted coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia in its election interference activities. Immediate post-election activity. As soon as news broke that Trump had been elected president, Russian government officials and prominent Russian businessmen began trying to make inroads into the new administration. They appeared not to have pre-existing contacts and struggled to connect with senior officials around the president-elect. As explained below, these efforts entail both official contact through the Russian embassy in the United States and outreaches sanctioned at high levels of the Russian government through business rather than political contacts. Outreach from the Russian government. At approximately 3 a.m. on election night, Trump campaign press secretary Hope Hicks received a call on her personal cell phone from a person who sounded foreign but was calling from a number with a DC area code. Although Hicks had a hard time understanding the person, she could make out the words, "Putin call." Hicks told the caller to send her an email. The following morning, on November 9, 2016, Sergei Kuznetsov, an official at the Russian embassy in the United States, emailed Hicks from his Gmail address with subject line "Message from Putin." Attached to the email was a message from Putin in both English and Russian, with Kuznetsov asked Hicks to convey to the president-elect. In the message, Putin offered his congratulations to Trump for his electoral victory, stating he looked forward to working with Trump on leading Russian-American relations out of crisis. Hicks forwarded the email to Kushner asking, "Can you look at this? Don't want to get duped, but don't want to blow off Putin." Kushner stated in congressional testimony that he believed that it would be possible to verify the authenticity of the forwarded email through the Russian ambassador whom Kushner had previously met in April 2016. Unable to recall the Russian ambassador's name, Kushner called Dmitry Symes of CNI, whom he had consulted previously about Russia, and asked, "What is the name of the Russian ambassador?" Kushner forwarded Symes' response, which identified Kislyak by name, to Hicks. After checking with Kushner to see what he had learned, Hicks conveyed Putin's letter to transition officials. 5 days later, on November 14, 2016, Trump and Putin spoke by phone in the presence of transition team members and including incoming National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. High-level encouragement of contacts through alternative channels. As Russian officials in the United States reached out to the president-elect and his team, a number of Russian individuals in the private sector began their own efforts to make contact. Peter Avin, a Russian national who heads Alfa Bank, Russia's largest commercial bank, described to the office interactions with Putin during this time period that might account for the flurry of Russian activity. Avin told the office that he was one of approximately 50 wealthy Russian businessmen who regularly meet with Putin in the Kremlin. These 50 men are referred to as oligarchs. Avin told the office that he met on a quarterly basis with Putin, including in the fourth quarter of 2016, shortly after the US presidential election. Avin said that he took these meetings seriously and understood that any suggestions or critiques that Putin made during those meetings were implicit directives, and that there would be consequences for Avin if he did not follow through. As was typical, the 2016 fourth quarter meeting with Putin was preceded by a preparatory meeting with Putin's chief of staff, Anton Vanno. According to Avin, at his fourth quarter 2016 one-on-one meeting with Putin, Putin raised the prospect that the United States would impose additional sanctions on Russian interests, including sanctions against Avin or Alfa Bank. Putin suggested that Avin need to take steps to protect himself and Alfa Bank. Avin also testified that Putin spoke of the difficulty faced by the Russian government in getting in touch with the incoming Trump administration. According to Avin, Putin indicated that he did not know with whom formally to speak and generally did not know the people around the president-elect. Avin told Putin he would take steps to protect himself and the Alfa Bank shareholders from potential sanctions. One of those steps would be to try and reach out to the incoming administration to establish a line of communication. Avin described Putin responding with skepticism about Avin's prospect of success. According to Avin, although Putin did not expressly direct him to reach out to the Trump transition team, Avin understood that Putin expected him to try to respond to the concerns he had raised. Avin's efforts are described in Volume 1, Section 4, B5. Kirill Dmitriev's transition-era outreach to the incoming administration. Avin's description of his interactions with Putin is consistent with the behaviour of Kirill Dmitriev, a Russian national who heads Russia's sovereign wealth fund and is closely connected to Putin. Dmitriev undertook efforts to meet members of the incoming Trump administration in the months after the election. Dmitriev asked a close business associate who worked for the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Royal Court, George Nader, to introduce him to Russian transition officials. Nader eventually arranged a meeting in the Seychelles between Dmitriev and Erik Prince, Trump campaign supporter and an associate of Steve Bannon. In addition, the UAE National Security Advisor introduced Dmitriev to a hedge fund manager and friend of Jared Kushner, Rick Gerson, in late November 2016. December 2016 and January 2017, Dmitriev and Gerson worked on a proposal for reconciliation between the United States and Russia, which Dmitriev implied he cleared through Putin. Gerson provided that proposal to Kushner before the inauguration, and Kushner later gave copies to Bannon and Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. Dmitriev is a Russian national who was appointed CEO of Russia's sovereign wealth fund, the Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, when it was founded in 2011. Dmitriev reported directly to Putin and frequently referred to Putin as his boss. RDIF has co-invested in various projects with UAE sovereign wealth funds. Dmitriev regularly interacted with Nader, senior advisor to UAE Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, Crown Prince Mohammed, in connection with RDIF's dealings with UAE. Putin wanted Dmitriev to be in charge of both financial and the political relationship between Russia and the Gulf states, in part because Dmitriev had been educated in the West and spoke English fluently. Nader considered Dmitriev to be Putin's interlocutor in the Gulf region and would relay Dmitriev's views directly to the Crown Prince Mohammed. Nader developed contacts with both US presidential campaigns during the 2016 election and kept Dmitriev abreast of his efforts to do so. According to Nader, Dmitriev said that his and the government of Russia's preference was for candidate Trump to win, and asked Nader to assist him in meeting members of the Trump campaign. Redaction there, Nader did not introduce Dmitriev to anyone associated with the Trump campaign before the election. Got a paragraph redacted there. Erik Prince is a businessman who had a relationship with various individuals associated with the Trump campaign, including Steve Bannon, Donald Trump Jr. and Roger Stone. Prince did not have a formal role in the campaign, although he offered to host a fundraiser for Trump and sent unsolicited policy papers on issues such as foreign policy, trade and Russian election interference to Bannon. After the election, Prince frequently visited offices at Trump Tower, primarily to meet with Bannon, but on occasion to meet Michael Flynn and others. Prince and Bannon would discuss foreign policy issues and Prince's recommendations regarding who should be appointed to fill key national security positions. Although Prince was not formally affiliated with the transition, Nader received assurances, a couple of redactions there, that the incoming administration considered Prince a trusted associate. Kirill Dmitriev's post-election contacts with the incoming administration. Soon after midnight on election night, Dmitriev messaged redacted, who was travelling to New York to attend the 2016 World Chess Championship. Redaction. Dmitry Peskov, the Russian Federation's press secretary, was also attending the World Chess Championship. Further redaction. Approximately 2:40 a.m. on November 9, 2016, news reports stated that candidate Clinton had called President-elect Trump to concede. Redaction there. At some time, someone wrote to Dmitriev, Putin has won. Later that morning, Dmitriev contacted Nader, who was in New York, to request a meeting with the key people in the incoming administration as soon as possible in light of the great results. He asked Nader to convey to the incoming administration that we want to start rebuilding the relationship in whatever is a comfortable pace for them. We understand all the sensitivities and are not in a rush. Dmitriev and Nader have previously discussed Nader introducing him to the contacts Nader had made within the Trump campaign. Dmitriev also told Nader that he would ask Putin for permission to travel to the United States, where he would be able to speak to media outlets about the positive impact of Trump's election and the need for reconciliation between the United States and Russia. Later that day, Dmitriev flew to New York, where Peskov was separately travelling to attend the chess tournament. Dmitriev invited Nader to the opening of the tournament and noted that if there was a chance to see anyone key from Trump camp, he would love to start building for the future. Dmitriev also asked Nader to invite Kushner to the event so that he, Dmitriev, could meet him. Nader did not pass along Dmitriev's invitation to anyone connected with the incoming administration, although one World Chess Federation official recalled hearing from an attendee that President-elect Trump had stopped by the tournament. The investigation did not establish that Trump or any campaign or transition team official attended the event, and the President's written answer denied that he had. Nader stated that Dmitriev continued to press him to set up a meeting with transition officials and was particularly focused on Kushner and Trump Jr. Dmitriev told Nader that Putin would be very grateful to Nader and that a meeting would make history. Some redaction. According to Nader, Dmitriev was very anxious to connect with the incoming administration and told Nader that he would try other routes to do so besides Nader himself. Nader did not ultimately introduce Dmitriev to anyone associated with the incoming administration during Dmitriev's post-election trip to New York. In early December 2016, Dmitriev again broached the topic of meeting incoming administration officials with Nader in January or February. Dmitriev sent Nader a list of publicly available quotes of Dmitriev speaking positively about Trump in case they were helpful. Erik Prince and Kirill Dmitriev meet in the Seychelles. George Nader and Erik Prince arranged Seychelles meeting with Dmitriev. Nader travelled to New York in early January 2017 and had lunch and dinner meetings with Erik Prince on January 3, 2017. Nader and Prince discussed Dmitriev. Nader informed Prince that the Russians were looking to build a link with the incoming Trump administration. He told Prince that Dmitriev had been pushing Nader to introduce him to someone from the incoming administration. Redaction. Nader suggested, in light of Prince's relationship with the transition team officials, that Prince and Dmitriev meet to discuss issues of mutual concern. Prince told Nader that he needed to think further about it and to check with transition team officials. After his dinner with Prince, Nader sent Prince a link to a Wikipedia entry about Dmitriev and sent Dmitriev a message stating that he had just met with some key people within the family and inner circle, a reference to Prince, that he had spoken at length and positively about Dmitriev. Nader told Dmitriev that the people he met had asked for Dmitriev's bio, and Dmitriev replied that he would update and send it. Nader later received from Dmitriev's 2 files concerning Dmitriev. One was a 2-page biography. The other was a list of Dmitriev's positive quotes about Donald Trump. The next morning, Nader forwarded the message and attachments Dmitriev had sent him to Prince. Nader wrote to Prince that these documents were the versions to be used with some additional details for them, with them referring to members of the incoming administration. Prince opened the attachments at Trump Tower within an hour of receiving them. Prince stated that while he was at Trump Tower that day, he spoke with Kellyanne Conway, Wilbur Ross, Steve Mnuchin, and others while waiting to see Bannon. Cell site location data for Prince's mobile phone indicates that Prince remained at Trump Tower for approximately 3 hours. Prince said that he could not recall whether during those 3 hours he met with Bannon and discussed Dmitriev with him. Redaction there. Prince booked a ticket to the Seychelles January 7, 2017. Following day, Nader wrote to Dmitriev that he had a pleasant surprise for him, namely that he had arranged for Dmitriev to meet a special guest from the new team, referring to Prince. Nader asked Dmitriev if he could come to the Seychelles for the meeting on January 12, 2017. Dmitriev agreed. Following day, Dmitriev sought assistance from Nader that the Seychelles meeting would be worthwhile. Dmitriev was not enthusiastic about the idea of meeting with Prince, and then Nader assured him that Prince wielded influence with the incoming administration. Nader wrote to Dmitriev, "This guy Prince is designated by Steve to meet you. I know him and he's very, very well connected and trusted by the new team. His sister is now a Minister of Education." According to Nader, Prince had led him to believe that Bannon was aware of Prince's upcoming meeting with Dmitriev, and Prince acknowledged that it was fair for Nader to think that Prince could pass information on to the transition team. Bannon, however, told the officer Prince did not tell him in advance about his meeting with Dmitriev. The Seychelles meeting. Dmitriev arrived with his wife in the Seychelles on January 11, 2017 and checked into the Four Seasons Resort where Crown Prince Mohammed and Nader were staying. Prince arrived the same day. Prince and Dmitriev met for the first time that afternoon in Nader's villa, with Nader present. The initial meeting lasted approximately 30-45 minutes. Redaction. Prince described the 8 years of the Obama administration in negative terms and stated that he was looking forward to a new era of cooperation and conflict resolution. According to Prince, he told Dmitriev that Bannon was effective, if not conventional, and that Prince provided policy papers to Bannon. We've got a redaction there. The topic of Russian interference in the 2016 election did not come up. More redactions there. Prince added that he would inform Bannon about his meeting with Dmitriev and that if there was interest in continuing the discussion, Bannon or someone else in the transition team would do so. Afterwards, Prince returned to his room where he learned that a Russian aircraft carrier had sailed to Libya, which led him to call Nader and ask him to set up another meeting with Dmitriev. According to Nader, Prince called and said he had checked with his associates back home and needed to convey to Dmitriev that Libya was off the table. Nader wrote to Dmitriev that Prince had received an urgent message that he needs to convey to you immediately, and arranged for himself, Dmitriev and Prince to meet at a restaurant at the Four Seasons property. The second meeting, Prince told Dmitriev that the United States would not accept any Russian involvement in Libya because it would make the situation there much worse. After the brief second meeting concluded, Nader and Dmitriev discussed what had transpired. Dmitriev told Nader that he was disappointed in his meetings with Prince for two reasons. First, he believed the Russians needed to be communicating with someone who had more authority within the incoming administration than Prince had. Second, he had hoped to have a discussion of greater substance, such as outlining a strategic roadmap for both countries to follow. Dmitriev told Nader that, redaction, Prince's comments were insulting, with a few redactions around that. Hours after the second meeting, Prince sent 2 text messages to Bannon from the Seychelles. As described further below, investigators were unable to obtain the content of these or other messages between Prince and Bannon, and the investigation also did not identify evidence of any further communication between Prince and Dmitriev after their meeting in the Seychelles. Erik Prince's meeting with Steve Bannon after the Seychelles trip. After the Seychelles meeting, Prince told Nader that he would inform Bannon about his discussion with Dmitriev and would convey that someone within the Russian power structure was interested in seeking better relations with the incoming administration. January 12, 2017, Prince contacted Bannon's personal assistant to set up a meeting for the following week. Several days later, Prince messaged her again, asking about Bannon's schedule. Prince said that he met Bannon at Bannon's home after returning to the United States in mid-January, briefed him about several topics, including his meeting with Dmitriev. Prince told the office that he explained to Bannon that Dmitriev was the head of a Russian sovereign wealth fund and was interested in improving relations between the United States and Russia. Prince had on his cell phone a screenshot of Dmitriev's Wikipedia page updated on January 16, 2017. Prince told the office that he likely showed that image to Bannon. Prince also believed he provided Bannon with Dmitriev's contact information. According to Prince, Bannon instructed Prince not to follow up with Dmitriev, and Prince had the impression that the issue was not a priority for Bannon. Prince related that Bannon did not appear angry, just relatively uninterested. Bannon, by contrast, told the office that he never discussed with Prince anything regarding Dmitriev, RDIF, or any meetings with Russian individuals or people associated with Putin. Bannon also stated that had Prince mentioned such a meeting, Bannon would have remembered it, and Bannon would have objected to such a meeting having taken place. The conflicting accounts between Bannon and Prince could not be independently clarified by reviewing their communications, because neither one was able to produce any of the messages they exchanged in the time period surrounding the Seychelles meeting. Prince's phone contained no text messages prior to March 2017, though provider records indicate that he and Bannon exchanged dozens of messages. Prince denied deleting any messages, but claimed he did not know why there were no messages on his device before March 2017. Bannon's devices similarly contained no messages in the relevant time period, and Bannon also stated he did not know why messages did not appear on his device. Bannon told the office that during both the months before and after the Seychelles meeting, he regularly used his personal BlackBerry and personal email for work-related communications, including those with Prince, and he took no steps to preserve those work communications. Kirill Dmitriev's post-election contact with Rick Gerson regarding US-Russia relations. Dmitriev's contacts during the transition period were not limited to those facilitated by Nader. Approximately late November 2016, the UAE National Security Advisor introduced Dmitriev to Rick Gerson, a friend of Jared Kushner who runs a hedge fund in New York. Gerson stated he had no formal role in the transition and had no involvement in the Trump campaign other than occasional casual discussions about the campaign with Kushner. After the election, Gerson assisted the transition by arranging meetings for transition officials with former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and UAE delegation led by Crown Prince Mohammed. When Dmitriev and Gerson met, they principally discussed potential joint ventures between Gerson's hedge fund and RDIF. Dmitriev was interested in improved economic cooperation between the United States and Russia and asked Gerson who he should meet with in the incoming administration would be helpful towards this goal. Gerson replied that he would try to figure out the best way to arrange appropriate introductions, but noted that confidentiality would be required because of the sensitivity of holding such meetings before the new administration took power and before cabinet nominees had been confirmed by the Senate. Gerson said he would ask Kushner and Michael Flynn who the key person or people were in the topics of reconciliation with Russia, joint security concerns and economic matters. Dmitriev told Gerson that he had been tasked by Putin to develop and execute a reconciliation plan between the United States and Russia. He noted in a text message to Gerson that if Russia was approached with respect and willingness to understand our position, we can have major breakthroughs quickly. Gerson and Dmitriev exchanged ideas in December 2016 about what such a reconciliation plan would include. Gerson told the office that the transition team had not asked him to engage in these discussions with Dmitriev and that he did so on his own initiative and as a private citizen. January 9, 2017, the same day, he asked Nader whether meeting Prince would be worthwhile. Dmitriev sent his biography to Gerson and asked him if he would share it with Jared or someone else very senior in the team so that they know that we are focused from our side on improving the relationship, and my boss asked me to play a key role in that. Dmitriev also asked Gerson if he knew Prince and if Prince was somebody important and worth spending time with. After his trip to the Seychelles, Dmitriev told Gerson that Bannon had asked Prince to meet with Dmitriev and the two had had a positive meeting. On January 16, 2017, Dmitriev consolidated the ideas for US-Russia reconciliation that he and Gerson had been discussing into a two-page document that listed 5 main points. 1. Jointly fighting terrorism. 2. Jointly engaging in anti-weapons of mass destruction efforts. 3. Developing win-win economic and investment initiatives. 4. Maintaining an honest, open and continual dialogue regarding issues of disagreement. 5. Ensuring proper communication and trust by key people from each country. January 18, 2017, Gerson gave a copy of the document to Kushner. Kushner had not heard of Dmitriev at that time. Gerson explained that Dmitriev was the head of RDIF, and Gerson may have alluded to Dmitriev being well connected. Kushner placed the document in a file and said he would get it to the right people. Kushner ultimately gave one copy of the document to Bannon and another to Rex Tillerson. According to Kushner, neither of them followed up with Kushner about it. On January 19, 2017, Dmitriev sent Nader a copy of the two-page document telling him that this was a view from our side and I discussed it in my meeting on the islands and with you and our friends. Please share with them. We believe this is good information to start from. Gerson informed Dmitriev that he had given the document to Kushner soon after delivering it. On January 26, 2017, Dmitriev told Gerson that his boss, and apparent reference to Putin, was asking if there had been any feedback on the proposal. Dmitriev said, "We do not want to rush things and move at a comfortable speed. At the same time, my boss asked me to try to have the key US meetings in the next 2 weeks if possible." He informed Gerson that Putin and President Trump would speak by phone on Saturday and noted that that information was very confidential. Same day, Dmitriev wrote to Nader that he had seen his boss again yesterday, who had emphasised that this was a great opportunity for us and we need to build this communication channel to avoid bureaucracy. On January 28, 2017, Dmitriev texted Nader that he wanted to see if I can confirm to my boss that your friends may use some of the ideas from the two-pager I sent you in the telephone call that will happen in 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. An apparent reference to the call scheduled between President Trump and Putin. Nader replied, "Definitely paper was so submitted to team by Rick and me. They took it seriously." After the call between President Trump and Putin occurred, Dmitriev wrote to Nader that the call went very well. My boss wants me to continue making some public statements that US-Russia's cooperation is good, or that US-Russia cooperation is good and important. Gerson also wrote to Dmitriev to say that the call had gone well. Dmitriev replied that the document they had drafted together played an important role. Gerson and Dmitriev appeared to stop communicating with one another approximately March 2017, when the investment deal that they'd been working on together showed no signs of progressing. And I think we might leave that there for episode 8. We will continue on with the next one.